Welcome to this local church learning session from United Methodist Communications that will help your church live stream not only on Facebook, but on multiple platforms simultaneously. If you are still exploring live streaming your worship services for the first time, or just looking to make your live stream better on Facebook, check out that other training on Resource UMC or United Methodist Communications Facebook pages. This video is part of a series of learning sessions that are aimed to help your church in using technology to connect with your congregation and community even when you're not able to be physically present together. Something that is really timely right now, but should still be useful in the future, as we should all be intentional on reaching new people in new ways. My name is Stephen Adair, and I'm the Director of Local Church Services. I'm joined today by Matt Crum, Solutions Architect with our Global Communications Technology team, and Lane Denson, who is our Manager of Web Development. So let's jump right in. What are the most important aspects a church should take into account when live streaming worship, especially when they want to up their game from just live streaming on Facebook?
Right. Well, as Stephen has just mentioned, we've already kind of covered Facebook Live in a previous session, and this one is going to be kind of taking that to the next step. And one of the main things that is you should keep in mind whenever you're setting up any sort of live stream setup is that good audio is going to be key. If your audience can see you real well, but they can't understand what you're saying, they're going to tune out immediately. So even if maybe your picture isn't the best, you don't have the best camera or what have you, as long as you can get a good, clean audio signal from the person speaking, you should be in okay shape. That should always be your primary consideration. So, and another one to keep in mind is the quality of your signal, the quality of your connection to the internet. Now, there's been a lot of strides made in Wi-Fi and cellular connections over the years, but whenever you can go directly into your router through a wired Ethernet connection, that's always going to provide a more stable and a more consistent experience as well.
Yeah, and just to add on to that point, I think making sure that you're testing your bandwidth before you go live, if that's possible, and maybe if your local church's internet isn't the fastest, looking into other options with LTE and cellular networks as a backup might be something to consider. But again, like all this will kind of factor into the reliability of your connection and your stream and kind of what quality you can push content at and those other things.
I actually shared in the other training that I did on Facebook Live only that our church had an issue with internet connectivity and the Wi-Fi strength in the sanctuary. And it was as easy as just getting the equipment provided by the cable and internet company switched out with newer equipment. So that might be a solution that churches might not think about. They might try to get the Wi-Fi extenders or whatnot, but really even that basic equipment that's provided by them might need an upgrade.
Yeah, and if there's somebody that's around that can help configure some of these devices, you can even make sure that if you have other church members using the internet normally, that is kind of throttled, so that way you still have a clean prioritization of your access and your stream there.
Yeah, and Matt, you had mentioned, test your bandwidth beforehand, make sure that you have a sufficient amount of space or room in the pipe, so to speak. Probably the two main ones that people can try to use are fast.com as well as speedtest.net.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think one of the other pieces beyond that, we were talking a little bit about kind of wireless and speed, and I think that kind of hits on an important point of just what environment you're in general. I know some pastors and church leaders are live streaming from their living room, Some are going in and live streaming from their sanctuary alone, or with a couple people or whatever. All these things are things to, kind of consider, and with that, there's some other things that can help the process as you're thinking it through. So, for example, you don't want to be backlit. You don't want, you would like to have good lighting on your face to some degree. Just be able to do some testing there and see how that's end up working out, and see how it looks for yourself. And if it's, if it works for you, then it should work for everybody else. And again, as Lane mentioned earlier, the real important thing is making sure that audio is as optimal as possible with the equipment that you have. That's the most important thing, I would say.
Yeah, so what are some of the streaming services that are available that a church could take advantage of?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, Facebook Live is a big one because a lot of people are on Facebook, obviously. Some other ones you may want to consider are YouTube. They offer live streaming for free. They may put ads on your video if they detect copyrighted material, which is a whole other kettle of fish that is, again, probably is already been addressed by a separate video in this series. But there's also livestream.com and Vimeo.com. Vimeo purchased Livestream last year, and they're still in the process of merging those two services, but that's also another option. And one that I've heard some churches having success with is Twitch.tv. It's primarily a service for streaming video games, but because it's Amazon backed, they have a lot more infrastructure than most of your other streaming platforms. And that comes in handy when you have a lot of people trying to stream and view those streams simultaneously.
Yeah, one of the college professors that I know is using Twitch, even though it is primarily a gaming service for their lectures now. That's remote, and they've really liked it. I think in the past, it's been one of the first services to kind of offer some higher quality streaming capabilities for free, which was really nice. But yeah, if you go to their website, it'll definitely feel like a very gaming centric platform. So,
right.
Accounts are another thing though on all these that you do want to keep in mind is, one of the things that can be frustrating for some Facebook folks are, or folks that aren't on Facebook, I suppose, is sometimes it does kind of send you through this login kind of game. Occasionally, if that's not where, if some of your audience isn't on there. I know with YouTube and Twitch, it's not that way. I'm not sure about what it would be. I would imagine live stream and Vimeo, you also don't need to log in, but I'm not sure on that one. But
yeah, for live stream in particular, you don't have to. You can, say only let people who have accounts with live stream in to view my stream. However, in most cases, at least in what we're talking about here, that's not going to be desired. So you can turn that off and open it up to everybody who may want to view it. So we've talked about the streaming services, some of the key points. Now I think we're going to move on to talking about some of the audio options, video options that we have, or that kind of takes you can step up your game beyond just simply pointing your cell phone at the preacher. So as you can see on this slide here, smartphones there's nothing wrong with them. They are actually quite good these days, especially your more modern phones. They have better cameras than what was available professionally 10 years ago. So that is certainly an option to consider. As you can see on the slide, if you couple it with a tripod and a smartphone mount, that's going to provide some additional stability. There are options for external microphones that you can plug into the jacks on the phone. Some of the microphones you may want to look into are the Blue series, and Shure, Shure, Zoom, Rode, Rode, and Sennheiser. Basically, you do a Google search for external microphones for cell phones, and you'll get a slew of options. But all of those brands are pretty solid, and obviously, the more you spend, the better quality it's going to be. But you don't have to break the bank to do this either.
Yeah, there's definitely a law of diminishing returns at the end of the day. Is like you can get something pretty decent for not a lot of money, and then the more expensive you get a little bit better, and at a certain point, it just doesn't make any sense. So that's something else to keep in mind. Don't feel like you have to go and copy what some of these professional production companies are doing. There's typically a good, affordable middle ground.
Right, definitely. And so, assuming you want to do something, you have the equipment, you have the capability to do something beyond just a smartphone as your video source. The next one would be, a computer, either a desktop or a laptop, and a web camera of some sort. Right now, there are several options, though, within your not necessarily budget range, but affordable range is going to be Logitech. They're kind of the 500-pound gorilla in this space. There are other ones as well, but most people use webcams for this sort of, at least for in this stratosphere here, and it seems to work fine. Again, if you can pull in a external audio, either a microphone or a mixing board, that's going to be better, but we'll cover that more in depth here in a minute.
Yeah, I think, go ahead. Yeah, sorry. I was just going to quickly say on some of those pieces with the webcams is that, if those can be something that is just plug and play, at the end of the day, you still got to kind of think through where the webcam is going to be located and if it's going to be in a distracting position. Similarly with the phone, right? Like, but again, if you're in your living room, if you're in those kind of scenarios, you have a lot more control. It doesn't matter. But if you end up wanting to use it later for future live streams, whenever you actually, hopefully, once all this stuff blows over, and if you're looking at to invest in equipment, that's something to keep in consideration if you want to continue to offer that service. Because that's one of the cool things about this is that, like, I think the silver lining here is that hopefully people will be able to offer their services to so many more people, years after this is over, and feel a little bit more comfortable doing some of these remote streaming things. So,
right, definitely, yeah, and that kind of leads into a point I was wanting to bring up is, when, at least in this situation where you're in a much more, I guess, intimate setting, you're not gonna have a full congregation. Probably the temptation is if you're in a traditional church setting is if you have a camera or your soundboard, it's going to be in the back. It's going to be the back of the sanctuary, and if you have the person giving the message up at the front, that may not be the best environment for that at this time. Don't be afraid to get the camera up real close. Let's make it personal. That's what I think what people are really looking for now is some sense of connection, and I think your preacher may be a little maybe not intimidated, but just a little less, maybe not terribly comfortable with that, but maybe something to try. Just get a little closer so that people can see something other than just a sanctuary, as nice as it may be.
And that's a good tip for all time, because I tell church leaders in every training that I do about social media, do not have your camera for photos or videos at the back facing forward, especially if there's a lower amount of people in the pews. I see that so often, and you just have to take into account how these images and videos look to the people that you're trying to reach outside of your community, and how that appears. So just to keep that in mind, everything, got to keep that marketing mind on all the time.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess on this last point here, And basically, whenever we're going through these, like you can kind of mix some of the things that we've said together, right? We'll be talking about audio too, and so you can kind of mix and match different solutions here. But they're also, if you're looking for a nice, a more professional look, and again, it'll be a higher investment, but looking into utilizing cameras that have those HDMI out capabilities and a capture card. Even if you do have like a camera that can push out, like a DSLR nicer camera or a mirrorless camera, you'll still need to be able to plug that HDMI into your computer. And what a lot of people get confused about early on when they first try it is they'll see an HDMI input, or what they think is an input is actually only an output on their computer. And so just because you have an HDMI like port on your laptop or desktop does not mean that you can kind of plug in your HDMI capable camera into a computer and have it to work fine. You do need this other device that will actually capture that video onto your system. What the HDMI out is for is specifically for your monitors and stuff like that, to be able to push data out instead of in. And so we need to have a special device, like there's a Elgato Cam Link, which is a more popular one now. That's just a little USB device that you plug in. But there's plenty of those that's available and out on the market as well that might be helpful and useful. But if you do want to go down this route, there's a lot of things to take into consideration. There's a lot of there are a lot of tutorials and YouTube videos kind of talking about each individual device, because there are a lot of nuances in them. So I would encourage definitely looking through that. But if you're looking to have this nice, shallow depth of field, which, with the blurred background and all that stuff, that would be kind of the route that you would take. And with video alone, you could probably, and the capture card, assuming that you have a computer, you're looking at around $2,000 or so of investment with just video and that capture card, maybe a little bit less if you're savvy about it. But then you also have to think about the cost of learning the camera. You have to think about, the time that you'll need to spend to get up to speed. It is a little bit more effort, but it can really pay off at the end of the day as well. And so I'm not sure if there are folks that are, interested in photography or videography or the creative side. They may be interested in helping this or have some of the equipment, and that would be really cool to be able to utilize. There's a lot of folks that enjoy this stuff and maybe does it professionally or for fun as a hobby, and could really help.
Now, Matt, in an earlier conversation we were having, you mentioned GoPros as a possible option that have maybe some built-in streaming applications. Could you give us more details on those?
Sure. So one of the neat things about GoPro and there's another action cam that DJI makes. I think it's the DJI Osmo Action is what it's called. The nice thing about those are they do have built-in streaming options available. DJI's just came out recently, so I think GoPros has been around for a while, but that way you don't have to have your phone, on a mount. It's not necessarily super expensive to be able to get started with the action cam, and they're, relatively small and can put out pretty decent quality. And again, it's like depending on the model and the year that you bought it, there are a lot of good options. And I won't say every GoPro can live stream either. I would definitely check and make sure that it's a 7 or 8. Here a 7 or 8, I know for sure it can live stream. I'm not sure about the ones prior to that, but it's pretty nice because you can just access it on your phone, connect it to your Facebook account or your YouTube account or whatever you're using, and then you still have access to your phone. You can kind of monitor things as it goes with, and it's just a little bit easier, kind of a in between of the smartphone. Has the ease of the smartphone, but a little bit more, a little bit better quality than maybe some of the kind of an in between option, basically.
Cool. Yeah, those are pretty neat, and they have a lot of options. Something that you may not consider, at first glance for church live streaming, but they probably will get the job done and then some.
Yeah, and again, there it's like if you can also connect some external audio to that as well, and again, make sure that you go and do your research on if you need an adapter or anything like that. But there's a lot of options, and people have been using these for all kinds of things um, outside of just the sporting events and stuff that they were originally marketed for. They're really kind of changing and broadening their scope into bloggers and some of these other things. And so they've been making some additional accessories and whatnot to make it, a little bit more appealing to what's starting to get into our lane. So.
Yep. Okay, well, I think we've covered a lot of the possible video options for getting your, capturing your video and getting it into your stream. Why don't we move on to audio? As we mentioned, audio is going to be key. You want your audience to hear what is being said, first and foremost. So, in the kind of the microphone or the audio realm, you have just as many options there as you do for video. To start, your smartphone is going to be your quickest option. As we mentioned earlier, there are also a handful of external microphones you can plug directly into your phone without the need for another device. But beyond that, assuming you're using a computer setup where you're capturing the video and audio through your computer, probably the next step, the next least expensive step would be looking into USB microphones. One area where you may want to research is in the area of podcasting microphones. There's just a huge market for inexpensive microphones that are good for podcasting, but can be used for, broadcasting, worship services as well, at least in a smaller setting. One of the big names right now is Blue. They have the Yeti and the Snowball mics, which are very popular.
This is a Yeti.
Oh, there you go.
That I'm using now. So,
right, they sound great. So, another brand is Audio Technica. They have quite a few options as well. There's also the Rode Procaster, and again, there are probably many more that we're not mentioning here. But just do some Googling, look for high quality USB microphones. And again, as Matt was saying, it's kind of diminishing returns. Get something that's good, that's not going to break the bank, and you should be in good shape. If you need to buy anything at all, you may also be in a situation where you have a good sound set up already. Your church has a good soundboard, you have the microphone set up and so forth. And that is certainly an option as well. Getting your audio into your computer could be as simple as going through you probably have a 1/8-inch jack on the back or the side that will take a stereo input, which that'll work. It can be kind of hit or miss based on the quality of the other pieces of the connection. There are also a handful of USB audio input devices, such as M Audio and again Audio Technica. Right now, I'm using a M Audio Air, which was about $100, and that's what's processing my microphone, going in USB into my computer. But you can run your soundboard into something like that, and you still have all the various options that your soundboard gives you with a direct USB connection into your computer.
Yeah, and I mean, and there are two kind of instances I would really look at here. It's is if if you've got a band and you're still doing that together, like if in some kind of fashion. I know that I shouldn't say band maybe, but a worship leader. I know that my church has done that, and they still need to have some basic mixing on there, and so using a soundboard has been really important. But then on the other hand, um, if it's just a pastor talking, it's there's a lot of other options there that you can go through that you don't necessarily need that. So it just depends on your situation and what kind of experience and your what kind of content you're wanting to put out, I suppose.
Yep. So we've covered kind of our audio options, our video options. This hasn't been exhaustive by any means, but hopefully this is a starting point. And so the final piece of the puzzle is going to be, now that you have your various components, how do you kind of mix it all together and broadcast it out on the internet? And for that, there are several software packages. Some are ones you can download for free. Some of them cost money. Some of them are websites that will allow you to do this process. And that was kind of something that I discovered just recently. Matt kind of turned me on to Lightstream, which is web-based, and it starts with a free option and lets you kind of simulcast to multiple platforms at once, YouTube and Facebook and any other ones. Matt, can you talk some more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, they end up interfacing with I think it was Restream.io for their multicast. But what's really nice about Lightstream is that it has a lot of advanced features, but it's all kind of in the browser. And you can even have stuff like a green room for people, of a quote virtual green room, so that you can have people on deck. They've already tested their audio. They're getting that stuff straightened up, and they're waiting for you to, to be able to come on, all that stuff. So you can have guests and some other things pretty easily. Yeah, the other aspect that it's nice about this and the other web options are if you don't have, maybe if you're concerned about not having a computer that is able to, do the kind of a more modern computer, essentially, like this might be another option for you, because a lot of that kind of horsepower is being done by their service and not your local machine. And so that's one thing to kind of think through. But I really like that particular service, because just to be able to throw up a logo or something like that, it's super intuitive and easy. You can do that on a lot of these services, but to put up text or other things, it's a bit of a it made more sense to me. I'm not sure if that's what other people would find, but I appreciated it. So.
Yeah, definitely. Lightstream seems very user friendly from the somewhat minimal experience I've had with it. Another option in the very similar vein is Restream Studio, which is a fairly new service from what I understand. It's also web-based. They start with a free tier, and it goes up from there based on a few different factors. Now, if you're interested in kind of running your own software on your computer versus a web service, that's kind of the more traditional way of doing it. There are several other options there. Probably the one that you're going to hear a lot about is OBS, which stands for Open Broadcast Software. It's not the most user-friendly package in the world, but it works, and it's being consistently developed. And there's a lot of support out there from other people who are using it. A branch of OBS is called Streamlabs OBS, which also is a little more user-friendly from what I understand, but it's based on that same framework.
Yeah, and just to talk a little bit through that, is that OBS, Open Broadcast Software, is what that stands for, and And why it might sound confusing, why there's like 2 or 3 different kinds of OBS, is that it is free and open source software. And so people have put their own spin and flavor on it because the UI is a little tricky. And so people have redesigned it to fit their use cases and release that out as well. And the nice thing is with OBS, you've got kind of all the features are kind of unlocked for you at that point. It's just more time consuming. It's a little bit, you've got to learn the software. I wouldn't expect to procrastinate on learning the software and starting out with OBS, for example. Like, it's definitely going to take a little bit more time. You might have to do some Googling as you're going on, but it does open pretty much all the doors for you for what a lot of people want to do is streaming in many cases. And so it's definitely one that it depends on the interests and the folks that are helping get this service off the ground on what they're wanting to do or what their skill sets are. But it's definitely something that is worth looking into if that sounds appealing.
I mean, I think even if a church wants to just use Facebook for live video, even maybe not even put it on YouTube or these other platforms that we've been discussing, to even schedule a live video though on Facebook, you have to use a computer, which would require some sort of additional software that you're talking about. So you can't schedule a live video from a phone, at least at this point. So even if you're just wanting to schedule live, which has its own benefits of, alerting people ahead of time that you're going live or that your worship is already going to be where it is and when it's going to be there, you still have to use this. So even if you're trying to stay basic, just that next level up, you would still be required to use some of these products or services.
Yeah. It can be a little daunting at first, but it's getting easier every day. If you had told me, even 2 or 3 years ago that every church in the nation would suddenly be live streaming with, minimal setup, I would have said, no, there's no way. There's the cost of entry, the barrier to entry is just too high. And that's kind of going away a lot, and it's just going to get better. So, one last thing I wanted to touch on as far as the software goes, if you're saying, okay, we're going to just go all in on this, we want to have, the top of the line and, pull out all the stops. Wirecast has been kind of the leader in this area for some time. Their software starts at around $400, $500 and goes up from there, but it's fairly user friendly, but there's also no limit to what you can do there. You can mix in multiple sources. You can do virtual sets where, you see a lot of I always think of the sportscaster backgrounds, which you can tell are not quite real. That's because it's all virtual. It's all done in 3D modeling, and they're just kind of putting it in via a green screen, but it looks very good. And I'm not saying that necessarily would work for your church, but I'm just saying that to emphasize the power of Wirecast. And if you're looking to spend some money on it, then it does a great job. But on the other end, if you're still kind of using your phone to do a lot of this, be sure to look at the apps that are available for these services on your phone or tablet on iOS and Android.
Yeah, I mean, you can, especially on, if you take that route of if you've only got kind of the cell phone game going on right now and you're just trying to get to the next level, using the local app but with an external microphone is going to help get you there, honestly. And so that's the easiest win that you can possibly have early on. And like, for example, even I have an iPhone and I have the one, the newer ones don't have the headphone jack, but it comes with the adapter thing. So I just plug in I have a lavalier mic that I'll just plug in. So that's the kind that you clip on and plug it into the adapter, and then all the local apps are getting feeds through that, which is really nice. And so that audio sounds so much better than what you would get just coming directly from your phone.
All right, well, I want to thank you both, Matt and Lane, for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us. And I want to thank everyone for being with us today. I hope that this learning session was helpful to you and your church to make your live streaming efforts and take them to the next level. I'm sure you have some additional questions, so if you do, please email us at localchurchservices@umcom.org. That is localchurchservices@umcom.org. And be sure to check out our other learning sessions that will be coming out and added to this video library.